Good Wednesday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock, time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Plenty of activity out in Berea with the Browns. Going through organized team activities. We will talk plenty about the Browns. Hear from Jim Schwartz, defensive coordinator. And look, I know it's May. It's not even June. I know it's 7-on-7s, but some things are looking very interesting out in Berea. Deshaun Watson working with his new wide receivers underneath. He finds Elijah Moore some easy yards. You got to like the look of that. This time more of a drop back seam route. Cedric Tillman, big-bodied wide receiver, gets it for a nice pickup. Goal line drill, scramble and a dump off. That would be Jerome Ford underneath. This might be the most fun of all. Deep ball, and that is Marquise Goodwin, 33 years old, still really good speed, and catches it for the long touchdown. Let's welcome in Cory Kinnan from BrownsWire.com. Cory, again, I know it's June. I know it's 7-on-7s. There's not a lot of real hitting. It's nice to see some of those things going on with Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, it's refreshing to finally see, the helmets on, some actual video content. We've speculated so much, and you can see a little bit like, oh, I think that's that concept, or I think that's this concept, but like we really won't know until the pads come on and we have some actual tape. But it's good to see some actual content, some actual pitch and catch. It's all new, like almost all new wide receivers. So, Elijah Moore, Cedric Tillman, Marquise Goodwin weren't in the building last year. So just the ability to build that rapport is fun. It's fun to see on video. So again, it's just step one. Again, it's May. It's not even June yet. Tomorrow. It's not even June yet. So we still have a long way to go. But it's fun to actually see the orange and brown. They're on the field. So.
Yep, and it's nice to see some big-bodied wide receivers and some speed. Talking about speed, veteran wide receiver Marquise Goodwin, who we showed you with that long catch, talked about developing a rapport with quarterback Deshaun Watson.
Connection was elite today, man. Just grateful for the opportunity. Deshaun is electric. You see that arm? He got God's arm for sure.
We were trying to decide on that last one. Were you in? Did you get the feed in?
What did the ref say?
I don't know. I didn't see.
Yeah. Hey, I just seen the rep doing this, so I think I was in.
There you go.
Hey, Marquise, you're over 30 years old now. How much speed have you lost since your prime as an athlete?
I think I'm pretty much in my prime, so I don't think I lost any speed. It's kind of like fine wine. You just get better with time.
How do you do that?
Taking care of my body, doing little things, spending time with my family, being intentional with my time and my habits. And, it's definitely working out. Got another opportunity to play football this year. I'm blessed.
And, Cory, we saw the drills. 33 years old. If he's lost a step, he had one to lose.
Absolutely. I mean, he's an Olympic qualifying athlete. Like, that's not an exaggeration. He's I think a triple jumper and a long jumper. So like he's an Olympic athlete, and he's got the speed that shows. I mean, I just like what the Browns did this offseason of acquiring what I would call role players in the wide receiver room. So, I think we have a tendency to kind of look at it as this is wide receiver 1, this is wide receiver 2, this is wide receiver 3. But I think the more appropriate way to look at it is, when Amari Cooper is in the X, this guy can play Y, this guy can play Z, and you kind of put it together like a puzzle, not so much 1, 2, 3, but what kind of variations can we do here? And I think having a guy like Goodwin, again, he's 33. He's had over 300 yards 3 of the last 4 seasons. Like, that might be what they ask of him. He's on a 1-year deal. He's 33 years old. So are they, we want this guy to stretch the field. If you can get him to close to 400 yards where he's kind of been 3 of the last 4 seasons, I think that's what you want. He's a role player. So, I like what Marquise Goodwin's going to bring. It's going to be a 1-year deal. But you know what? Again, role players. When we talk about the wide receiver room a year ago, we had Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones, and really you're pushing Donovan Peoples-Jones to be your wide receiver too, and that was about it. So now you deepen the stable quite a bit.
Yeah, and they, like you mentioned, they all have different skills that you can highlight and accentuate. Along those lines, Sam Monson, Steve Palazzolo from PFF NFL Show, reasons for the Browns offense to be optimistic about the upcoming season.
The first reason for optimism has to be that it would be very difficult for Deshaun Watson to be as bad next year as he was last year. So any kind of improvement is going to help, and there's a large room for him to get better and get towards where we've last seen him. That 2020 grade was a 92.5, which puts him up there with the Josh Allens, the Joe Burrows, the Patrick Mahomes of the world, as basically one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Even if we assume that that is an unrealistic baseline, that throwing for 8.9 yards per attempt, he had a passer rating of 112 that year. If we assume that that's an unrealistic expectation, and even if he goes back to being the player that he was the 2 years before that, where his grade was 81.3, 82.7, a more realistic kind of area, that's still a jump in almost 30 grading points in where he was last season. So if that happens, they're in business.
Yeah, again, if he's a top 10 quarterback, they're an 11, maybe 12-win team, and I say that based on the fact that that division is that tough. I don't think anybody in the AFC North, including the Bengals, is winning 12 games.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. It's a tough division for sure. The Browns have the luxury of having the fourth place schedule from, what happened last season. So, they're going to play the AFC West and the AFC South, or NFC West and AFC South, which are two of the weaker divisions in football as well. So you can rack up some wins there. And again, what I like to think as a baseline is just what if they split in the division? What if they go 3-3? Kind of what are we looking at outside the AFC North? So it's going to be tough. But again, going back to Watson, going back to the offense, going back to the changes we're anticipating. And again, Watson had training camp. He was in the building all offseason as well. But once you get into the season and once you have Jacoby Brissett for 11 games and you try to flip a switch in week 12, like that's different from saying, well, he was in the building all offseason. But again, I don't want to make excuses, and I truly don't think there are any more excuses left for Kevin Stefanski, left for the Browns. They have a competitive roster. You have a full offseason, and you have 17 games with your starting quarterback. So it's now or never for this team. But I do think they're primed in a good position schedule-wise, and they're going to see some healthy progression back to the mean from Watson, I think, too.
Yeah, I agree with you. Again, if he's a top 10 quarterback, they're in really good shape. This is kind of interesting. So DeAndre Hopkins is a free agent. We keep hearing all kinds of stuff. Jordan Schultz, national NFL writer on the Ross Tucker podcast, with his handicapping of where Hopkins may end up.
Well, I mentioned Kansas City. I mentioned Buffalo. Ross, they don't have any money. They have no cap space. So the two teams that stand out to me would be New England because of Belichick. They signed Juju, and maybe Cleveland. And I would love to see him rekindle that magic with Deshaun Watson. Obviously, Amari Cooper's there as well. They do have some space. Andrew Berry could get aggressive. It's an odd time, though, for Hopkins in the sense that, yes, he's a perennial All-Pro. He's 30. He's still a really good player. But teams have already allocated their money for skill positions. So I don't necessarily think there's a rush. He has new representation. But Cleveland and New England stand out to me. I'm just selfishly thinking, can you imagine what it would be like to have Hopkins, Diggs, and Allen, or Mahomes, Kelsey, and Hopkins? I don't know how you get there from a financial standpoint.
And again, Cory, it's kind of interesting. I kind of go back and forth with Hopkins. On the one hand, really productive years with Deshaun Watson. The question is he still that guy? He's on the other side of 30.
Yeah, it's important to take a look at how Hopkins has traditionally won, and he's never been an elite separator. He's always kind of been an above the rim kind of guy. And so with that being the case, like, is that going to translate now that he is 30? Again, he was still really productive when him and Kyler Murray were on the field together last year. So that's important to remember. Again, he was suspended early in the season, and then Kyler Murray got hurt near the end of the year. But that middle chunk where they were together, he was still really productive. But again, going back to role players, and again, DeAndre Hopkins doesn't come to a team to be a role player, and I don't think if he came to the Browns, they would ask him to be that. But Donovan Peoples-Jones is also one of those guys that's not an elite separator and is kind of an above-the-rim kind of guy. Cedric Tillman, you 6'3" rookie wide receiver you just drafted, is kind of the same way. So if they were to sign Hopkins, I think that's a way where they're saying, we would really like to redshirt Tillman this year. But again, Hopkins probably would sign a 1-year deal. Is he looking for something more long-term, considering he is over 30? Does he not want to bank on 1 year? So if he could lock down some future money, would he take that instead? The Browns have the cap space. Again, they're going to get $11 million more on Friday when June 2nd hits for the Clowney and the Johnson III cuts. So they're going to be at about $15 million. Is that enough to get it done in year one? Again, typically they do really low year one cap hits, so they could probably make it work $5 million, assuming it's a multi-year deal. But again, if it's a 1-year deal, OBJ really blew the market out of the water for 1-year deals. Like that's going to be tough to match. So if that's what Hopkins is looking at, man, that I could dream about it for 1 year. I think it would be really fun. You could say, you know what, Cedric, redshirt this year. Donovan Peoples-Jones is in a contract year. I think that would be an indication. Maybe they would just say Cedric's coming in next year. I don't know. It does feel like a little bit of replication of skill sets based on the bodies in the room. But again, it's DeAndre Hopkins, and you can always make room for DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, and the other thing is it gives Deshaun Watson that extra security blanket. You went out and you got Akins, the tight end. You give him DeAndre Hopkins. Now you got two guys that are really familiar with him. So I would get it if they did it. All right, before we go to break, this is kind of interesting. So first chance to talk to Jim Schwartz after OTAs. He was asked the obvious question about Greg Newsome, if he would play inside based on the fact that Newsome said he wasn't crazy about playing inside last year. Here's Jim Schwartz's answer to that.
My interactions with Greg have been awesome. He's been willing to do whatever we've asked, but the happiness of players is not my concern. You know, and that's not going to be the determining factor of how we play guys or anything else. We're going to do what's best for our team. We're going to play guys in the best matchups, and our job as coaches is to put guys in positions that they can succeed. But you know, I don't want to make that sound like a negative on Greg, because he's been outstanding. He's had some really good reps in this stuff. He's played outside corner. He's played inside corner. He's going to be an important part of our defense, whether he's playing inside, outside, or rushing the passer.
And it's important to note, Schwartz comes from that Bill Belichick do your job kind of mindset, and that's kind of what he's saying right there.
Yeah, he is. And again, I think Newsome's unhappiness was predominantly from being almost exclusively inside.
Right.
And so, you know, the Browns ran 75% nickel last year, and it was exclusively him. And when you're running that much nickel, you kind of have to ask your defensive back. You have to ask that nickel to act as almost a linebacker and to fit the run, because teams aren't going to throw the ball 75% of the time. They're going to run against you when you're in nickel. So I think that's where more of his disgruntledness came from. And Denzel Ward, speaking today, came out and said, yeah, I'm going to be playing in the slot a lot more this year too. So it sounds like the Browns are going to be doing something they haven't under Joe Woods, which is they're going to start matching. So under Joe Woods, it was almost exclusively Denzel Ward is on this side, the other outside corner's on this side, and we're going to stick with that, which I like, because there are times last year when, especially against like Miami, when you have Tyreek Hill, who will play a ton of snaps in the slot. You'll get those guys who will play a ton of snaps in the slot. Like Tampa will play Mike Evans and Chris Godwin a ton of snaps in the slot, and I feel like you have to match. And that's just something they didn't do last year. So it sounds like with Denzel Ward saying, yeah, I'm going to play a lot in the slot this year too, they kind of have that match mentality where it's not going to be, you know, you're going to line up who's ever coming out here on the right side. Instead, you know, we're going to put Denzel on the matchup that best suits his skill set. We're going to put Martin on the best matchup that fits his skill set, and we're going to do the same thing with Greg. So I think the secondary is set up for a lot more success this year.
Cory Kinnan from BrownsWire.com and I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll hear more from Jim Schwartz, talk a little defense. We'll also hear from special teams coordinator Bubba Ventrone. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Cory Kinnan from BrownsWire.com. Defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz talking about getting the pieces on the defensive line to play the style of defense that he likes to play, as well as what to expect from that defense.
There is communication of how players are going to be used, right? And what's going to be asked of them, and, does this player fit? What do you think? Things like that. But, final determination, like I said before, this is Andrew and Kevin's and team. It's my job to coach the guys that they give us. But I'm really happy with the guys up front, the additions they've made. I think they fit us really well. I think we got a lot of interchangeable spots. We'll play a lot of guys up front, right? We're not just going to play 4 guys. We'll roll through 8, maybe even 9 guys at times, trying to keep guys fresh and keep them throwing 100-mile-an-hour fastballs. You guys will get tired of my baseball analogies, but it's a lot of D-line is a lot like throwing relief in major leagues now, right? Like these guys coming in from the pen throwing 100, 101. I watched that guy from the Guardians last night and the guy from the Orioles last night. Both of them are throwing over 100. Well, you can't unless you're Nolan Ryan. You can't do that stuff for 7, 8 innings. And same thing with D-line. The tempo that we want those guys to play. We're going to need to rotate fresh troops in. Offensive lines don't sub, but we can. We can keep the pressure on those guys, and we can play to a high standard with that depth, and that's an important part of what we do.
And again, Cory, the thing that you like hearing, they want to be aggressive. You don't want to play 8, 9 guys unless you plan on just getting after it and being aggressive. And there wasn't an identity to the Browns defense the last couple of years. There just wasn't.
True, and there wasn't a deep stable of bodies. So, we were playing practice squad guys, like literally practice squad guys were coming up and playing snaps on Sundays, like Roderick Perry last year. Like that. That's a reality of where the room was a year ago, and Tommy Togiai, like he's a 4th-round pick, but there's not yet reason to believe that he might not be one of the worst defensive tackles in the NFL currently. Like, just based on his performance on the field. And that's not meant to throw anything at him, but that's the reality of the situation. But they go out and they add Dalvin Tomlinson. They go out and they draft Siaki Ika, 2 guys that are roster locks. And I think they brought in Tristan Hill and Maurice Hurst to add a spirit of competition in that room. Again, if you look at the amount of guaranteed money those 2 guys got, it wasn't a lot. So I don't think those guys are locks to make the roster. But what they're going to do is they're going to force Jordan Elliott. They're going to force Tommy Togiai. They're going to force Perrion Winfrey to work for snaps, to work to make the roster. And I think that's kind of a healthy thing that you want to breed. Again, Mo Hurst has been really good when he's been healthy. But again, he had that heart condition coming out of Michigan. And he's had some injury history as well since he's been in the league. So, and then Tristan Hill's still young. He's been up and down, but he's still young. But again, the back end of that room is really good now. And then speaking of defensive ends, you go out, you get Zarius Smith. You go out and you get Okoronkwo. Like those are 2 dudes who are going to play a lot of snaps. You still have Alex Wright, who I think is probably the only guy on the roster who has the ability to play inside and out consistently. So I think there's a role for him. Elijah McGuire, they're probably going to ease him in where he's not going to play a ton of snaps early on, but that's a guy who could see a workload by midseason, by the end of the year. So they went out and they really revamped their defensive line, and it's for what Jim Schwartz says. He wants refreshed bodies on the field all the time. So yeah, I love what they've done up front.
I agree with you. And the unstated part of it is if you're playing less snaps, you don't get as beat up. When you're fatigued, you're more likely to get injured. So it keeps you healthier so you can play more. Pro Football Focus ranked the interior defensive lineman. One of the guys the Browns signed, Dalvin Tomlinson, checks in at 18. His PFF run defense grades have dipped every season since his rookie year, 82.7 mark. He's coming off a season where he set career highs in PFF pass rushing grades at 77.6 and pressures at 30. The national perspective on Tomlinson seems to be all over the place. One guy, some people say he's a run stuffer. You see the PFF grades. He is an elite run stuffer, and the Browns needed that. So let's say that. And the pressures, if they get that, that's an added bonus.
Absolutely. And again, he's a guy who can play 3-tech or 1-tech. So, when Siaki Ika's on the field, you're probably kicking Dalvin out to 3. But if you're bringing on Jordan Elliott, or you're bringing on Alex Wright to play some 3-tech, or you're bringing on, Hurst or Hill, who both have some get off the balls, and they're pretty explosive athletes, like you can cook Dalvin inside. So again, what they did is they gave themselves some versatility to kind of rotate bodies in, to give some different looks up front and to keep bodies fresh. Again, Dalvin Tomlinson has some of the strongest hands in the NFL coming off the ball. Like, that guy can send shockwaves to the chest of the man across from him. And again, what I think that the Browns have always valued in defensive tackles is the ability to generate pressures, is the ability to get after it as a pass rusher. I think they've kind of come back to the mean a little bit in terms of expectation and say, we can't only have gap shooters, though, because that's what they've had the past couple of years is just guys who penetrate gaps, and they've gotten blown off the ball against the run, or they overshoot the gaps just trying to get after the quarterback and leave big rush lanes. So with the drafting Ika, big body, who still has shown some savvy to get after it as a pass rusher, and by signing Dalvin Tomlinson, again, kind of a pretty well-rounded defensive tackle. Again, his run defense grades might have dipped, but they're still really good. Like, there's no really good. So I think they just went out and they said, let's get some well-rounded guys. And then they've kept the gap shooters on the roster too. So again, Tristan Hill, Maurice Hurst are good athletes. Perrion Winfrey, that's what he's good at, is shooting gaps. So I think they're leaving opportunities for that as well.
Let's talk a little bit about Jordan Elliott. How important is this year? A third-round pick had a huge opportunity a season ago, and for whatever reason, it just didn't happen. How important is this year for him?
It'll be important somewhere. I don't know if it's Cleveland or not. Again, he's one of those guys, and he's got fans in the building, man. That, like, no matter what happens on the field, for some reason, it always seems like there's something that comes out that this coach loves Jordan Elliott. And I feel like we've already heard it about Jim Schwartz. Like, Jim Schwartz is a fan of Jordan Elliott. So, like, it feels like he's a cat with 9 lives. I think it's because he's probably got a really strong work ethic and probably does things the right way in practice to earn this respect. But he's got to show something on the field. I don't think he's a lock to make the roster. I don't think he's a lock to start. I think he probably gets lumped in as the starter to start camp, just because he's the only guy other than Dalvin Tomlinson with significant playing experience in the room. With what Hurst does too, but he's coming off a significant injury as well. So I think he probably starts to start camp, but I don't think he's a lock to make the roster. It could be one of those situations, though, where if they are rotating in a lot of bodies, the Browns could say, you know what, it's a 1-year deal, like 1 year left on his contract. We can hope he plays well. If he does, we can get something in ways of a comp pick formula kind of adjuster out of it. But I think it's probably too little too late to start talking extension with Elliott in Cleveland. You're entering the last year, man. I feel like the writing's on the wall there a little bit, but who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, you get a new defensive coordinator, you have an opportunity. Bubba Ventrone talked to the media today, new special teams coordinator, talked about Cade York and how he's progressing, the Browns kicker who was a rookie last year.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I would say this. So every player, every season, every situation is different, especially for a rookie. You come into, and you're not kicking in an easy environment. The crowd, obviously, the weather conditions, just being at a different level overall. I think that a lot of things factor into it. I think he's done a good job, and he's learned from a lot of, his mishaps from last year and where he needs to be corrected on. So I think that having that understanding, yeah, obviously you see some things on film that you want to be able to correct, and I think that's what we're trying to do right now. Great kid, hard worker, very in tune with his mechanics, and almost too in tune at times, I would say. So trying to get him to just kind of make everything simple, make the corrections fast, and apply them to the next kick. We're working through some things now. Operation's been pretty solid to this point. We'll have a team field goal period next Wednesday. So you guys will get to see him kick in that setting there.
And Cory, it's kind of interesting, a little too focused on mechanics. When you hear that, it's like, you don't want a kicker to have to think about things. Just go kick.
Yeah, so when he was first drafted by the Browns, I had somebody, a mutual colleague of mine who covers LSU, who sent me a DM on Twitter as soon as the Browns drafted him and said, hey, just so you know, you're getting a perfectionist. Like, he told me a story about how Cade York hit a 56-yarder one time and was mad that he didn't hit it perfectly, didn't hit it square down the upright. So that's just the kind of that's the kind of mentality he has. So I could see how he could get in his own head a little bit if that's the mentality you're going with. So I think that's a good thing that Bubba Ventrone brought up is, almost too much. We're trying to get him to simplify it a little bit. But for what the Browns invested in him and just the kicking struggles they've had ever since they cut Phil Dawson, it's like, man, we could use a kicker. We could use a kicker. So I'm really hoping that KDR figures it out.
Yep, I'm with you. You know, great start in that opener, and it was almost like, ugh, after that. So hopefully it's all behind him, and he's ready for a good second year. Cory, Kinnan, and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll hear from Denzel Ward. We'll hear from Marquise Goodwin again. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Cory Kinnan from BrownsWire.com here on Sports4CLE. Denzel Ward met with the media, talked about the subtle changes going on with the Browns' defensive schemes.
Yeah, we talked about it, but I think with this new system that coach is bringing in, it's kind of take out all those if, ands, and kind of those questionings. So you pretty much, you know what you're doing, and you just go do it. You don't have to read too much out there.
Would you say that's the biggest difference? I know you want to compare and contrast, but is that one of the biggest difference between last year and this year? Is last year there were a lot of checks, a lot of things. This year it's you're doing your job. This is what you do.
Yeah, I would say so.
Denzel, saw you inside quite a bit too. Like, going to see more of that as the season goes on?
Yeah, you can definitely see that. So I may be inside, outside, safety. So wherever I can to be to make a play and help this team out.
And Cory, again, we talked a little bit just about, you know, the matching up. That's kind of what he's alluding to. But the important thing that, you know, I took away from that is just go out and Jim Schwartz is going to look at it and say, we went out and got elite players. Let's just go play.
Yeah, so, I mean, just way too many times over the past 2 seasons where these guys are talking themselves in circles and a bust happens. Like, way too many coverage busts, especially for the amount of assets, the amount of money invested in the secondary. It's like, it's almost neutralizing their talents by trying to get them in position. So it feels like it's going to be a lot more free, a lot more loose for these guys to just go out and make plays, line up, and go out there and punch the guy in the mouth across from you. So I'm really much looking forward to that because, again, the talent is there. Denzel Ward, 4th overall pick in 2021. What got him paid, he was a top 5 corner in the NFL. So Greg Newsome in 2021 was regarded up there with Patrick Surtain Jr. for the Broncos, who's now considered one of the best corners in football. Like, they were going at it for the best rookie corner in football that year. So just let these guys go up and play. And again, Martin Emerson had an excellent rookie season as well. Probably not quite on par as what Newsome did as a rookie, but like right there. So they have 3 good corners, 3 different body types, 3 different skill sets. Just let them go play. So I'm really looking forward to that, to just see how loose and how effective these guys can be. Yeah,
and Jim Schwartz even talked about it. He said, you know, it's too early to be able to tell that. We'll get our personality, but you can see they're going to be aggressive, and they're going to be fun to watch on defense. Before I let you go, Marquise Goodwin, we talked about him a little bit earlier, brings an element of speed to the Browns along with Elijah Moore. At 33, he talked about how he stays fast as well as this opportunity with the Browns.
Training in the offseason, going hard on the track. I'm a track and field athlete, 2012 Olympian for people who don't know. So that's a huge background of mine. I love spending time on the track. In the offseason, I volunteer with the Texas track team. I volunteer coach, so I spend a lot of time out there.
How do you look at this as an opportunity with a new team?
Another opportunity just to stack some wins, man. Build a culture here that is about winning and create a change. You know, after making the playoffs a few years ago, just, you know, headed right back on the way up. So just trying to do my part, do my job.
And again, Cory, we talked about it a little bit earlier. It's not like he's going to play, you know, 40 snaps. But what he is going to do is defenses are going to have to know where he is when he lines up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And again, he's a field stretcher. The only other player the Browns have what he has is Anthony Schwartz, who's been, as we know, inconsistent at best. some pretty iffy hands at best. So again, Goodwin has had some injury history as well, but he's consistent when he's on the field. So just knowing where he is going to create opportunities for Elijah Moore. It's going to create opportunities for Amari Cooper, who are two of the better route runners in the entire NFL, and they're both on the team. So again, Elijah Moore doesn't really get that respect because of his time in New York and the lack of targets he got and the lack of opportunities he had. But he's a really good football player and a really good route runner. So I just think what we're doing is we're creating pockets and opportunities for guys to get open, whether that's distracting a safety deep down the field or, causing a bracket on Amari Cooper that's going to allow somebody else to sneak open. But I think the Browns are doing their best to create pockets and create windows for Deshaun Watson to throw into. So they revamped the room, again, added role players. I really don't like the analogy of using your wide receiver room to build a basketball team, like a 1 through 5, but I think they've kind of done something like that. They've got a point guard, they've got a small forward, they've got a big. They can kind of roll those bodies out and create pockets for Deshaun Watson to throw into.
Yeah, the other thing is you split those guys with speed out, and you're taking guys out of the box, and that opens things up for Nick Chubb as well, because you're not going to put. There aren't many people in the NFL you're going to line up one-on-one with either Marquise Goodwin or Elijah Moore, because if you do, Deshaun Watson's getting them the football early.
Right, and you mentioned Nick Chubb, and again, Nick Chubb has historically averaged 6 yards per carry out of shotgun. So, when they do spread that out, you're not allowing teams to stack 8 in the box anymore. So, and if you are running out of gun, you're running into lighter boxes with a back who's been historically pretty good at it. So Nick Chubb should be grateful. He's probably not going to have as nearly as many carries as he had a year ago, and that's a good thing to prolong his playing career. But I just feel like it's going to create a much more efficient and effective offense both through the air and on the ground. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Cory Kinnan, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Cory. Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. Cory Kinnan, make sure you check him out. Really good stuff on brownswire.com. We will continue talking Browns after a quick timeout. Brad Spielberger, Pro Football Focus, straight ahead. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports for CLE. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, Frank from Cleveland. Hope you had a great Memorial Day. Couple things. Are we going to get some cap space freed up after June for like JJ3 and a couple other guys? And number two, with DeAndre Hopkins, Now, they say they're going to let DPJ walk at the end of the year. Why not trade him now and maybe sign DeAndre Hopkins to a 1-year contract? And as far as the schedule, we're going to know what the Browns are all right out the gate. You know, got 3 division opponents, so let the cards fall where they will. All right, great show, Dave. Love you, brother, and be safe.
Voicemails. So here are 6 teams that are picking up cap space Friday. That's the June 1st post designation. Yeah, the Browns pick up almost $11 million from Clowney and John Johnson III's contract. Let's welcome in Brad Spielberger from Pro Football Focus. Brad, I don't know that they're going to necessarily let Donovan Peoples-Jones walk after the year. He may play his way out of their price range potentially. The Hopkins thing is really interesting, and we got a couple of things on this. Just your thoughts about Hopkins and his fit here.
Yeah, it is interesting. Of course, he goes ahead and signs with a Cleveland-based agent in Kelton Crenshaw. Obviously has the connection to Deshaun Watson going back to their days in Houston. So you can start to raise some eyebrows. But for me, it comes back to, yes, we can talk about the salary cap and how to manipulate that and yada, yada, yada. The Browns are currently scheduled to spend about $25 million more in cash this year than any other team in the entire NFL. And they're also scheduled to be the #1 cash spender next season already. That, of course, is subject to change. So are they going to be willing, after trading away a pick, to get Amari Cooper on obviously a 3-year, $60 million deal, trading for Elijah Moore, still make another move to probably spend a decent chunk on DeAndre Hopkins? You know, maybe they are. They're going to go all in and make this push, but I struggle to see it. Again, the salary cap can be manipulated. For me, it's more just how deep are Jimmy Haslam's pockets really going to be this season?
Yeah, that's a fair question. And there's a lot of speculation. So Adam Schefter on his podcast, take a listen to him kind of doing the whole game with where he thinks Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins are.
And, of course, there's the Cleveland Browns. He worked with Deshaun Watson in the past. I'm sure Deshaun Watson would want to work with him again. The Browns certainly could use another wide receiver to complement Amari Cooper, although Donovan Peoples-Jones came on, and they do have some other young wide receiving talent. But Cleveland would make some sense. But again, does DeAndre Hopkins want to go there? Here's the thing. I think that the public is a lot more interested in DeAndre Hopkins than NFL teams are interested. And all we have to do is look back at the fact that for months he was available, and for a multitude of reasons, nobody traded for him. So either they couldn't placate the Arizona Cardinals or couldn't placate DeAndre Hopkins, or he didn't want to go to a certain place to restructure. But for a multitude of reasons, he's still out there, and he's probably the most high-profile free agent out there, with maybe the exception of Ezekiel Elliott. Those are the 2 guys that I think are the most interesting names out there right now. And so we went months without DeAndre Hopkins movement, and now we'll wait to see when there is movement. I don't think, and I could be wrong, but I don't think it's going to move quickly. I think he could be on the market for a little while. And to me, when I look at it, I look at the Chiefs, the Bills, the Patriots, the Browns, all have some advantages and all have some disadvantages, and we'll see how that works out over time.
And Brad, the reason I listen to that is the relative to teams versus the public perception of Hopkins. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it does happen a lot. Obviously, guys are very high profile and are very good players for a long time, have early draft status as a first-round pick. And he does have the most receiving yards through his age 30 season compared to any receiver in the NFL. So it's not like it's totally drummed up. But I think the thing here is, look, the suspension is legit from 2 years ago. I mean, you do wonder, hey, maybe were PEDs a reason why he was being able to play at a very high level through his late 20s? And then, of course, some injuries have cropped up recently. He misses the last couple games in Arizona. There were kind of questions of his dedication to the club over the second half of the season. They did pick top 5 overall, and to his credit, you have the general manager getting, leaving in the offseason. They get a coach fired while they're in Mexico. Like, let's not blame DeAndre Hopkins for the complete and total dysfunction of the Arizona Cardinals organization. But if you're going to bring in one of these big name, big profile guys, you probably do want a guy that, 5 follows orders and stays in line and doesn't ruffle any feathers and all those things. Frankly, Jadeveon Clowney, probably kind of an example or maybe a recent situation where they had a guy who kind of did ruffle some feathers, and maybe they don't think it's worth it to kind of go down the same path. So, not saying he's a bad guy or anything, but they're in a do-or-die year. I think this entire staff probably realizes that, and any distractions or any negative press or publicity, doesn't help them in their pursuit of, frankly, keeping their jobs and also winning a lot of football games. So, yeah, I think the last piece here as well is the Odell Beckham Jr. contract, getting a 1-year, $15 million deal, fully guaranteed with incentives, is a killer for every team trying to talk to DeAndre Hopkins, because in his mind, he's probably saying, yeah, I haven't been the greatest player the last 2 years, but I've sure been better than the guy who basically has not played. And I just, that deal is such an outlier to me that I think it's going to, I agree with Schefter. I wouldn't be surprised if this drags on a little bit and is not resolved quickly.
Yeah, I get it. I agree wholeheartedly. Now, for everybody wondering why the Browns would entertain this, take a look at these numbers for DeAndre Hopkins playing with Deshaun Watson. Watson had a passer rating of 101, almost 10,000 yards, 71 touchdowns, 29 picks when they played together in 38 games. So I guess the question becomes this, Brad, when you look at it. How much have the Browns upgraded their wide receiver core up to this point, and does DeAndre Hopkins, does adding him to that, does that move the needle that much further ahead?
So I think they really have made significant improvements. I think, as we've talked about before, Elijah Moore brings a skill set that was not really there in a shifty guy in the interior that gets open quickly, and you can help get the ball out of Deshaun Watson's hands quicker, which I think is an important element, especially in this Kevin Stefanski offense. I think he'll be used on a lot of jet motion, and they'll do different creative things with him to get him the ball early and often and just keep Deshaun Watson upright and keep the offensive line fresh early on in games as well. But I think the reason why Hopkins, not just because the connection, not just because he's quote-unquote good, the reason why it does make a lot of sense and is very tantalizing is I think his style is a perfect fit with Deshaun Watson, where Watson is comfortable throwing to guys that are covered or not wide open. And Hopkins has never been an elite separator. He is a contested catch guy that 50-50 balls to him are really, 80-20 balls, all the cliches, whatever. But it's true. He's a guy that makes these acrobatic catches. He has great body control in the air, and then he can make guys miss in space after that. And Watson is a guy, some quarterbacks don't. Some quarterbacks like a Derek Carr, they're afraid to throw to a guy that's covered, and they don't trust he'll come down with the football. I think Watson and him have always had a good, both of their styles line up pretty well. I guess you would say that's the Donovan Peoples-Jones in this offense, and no one's going to argue he's a better player than DeAndre Hopkins, no matter what version you're getting. I think that's the tantalizing piece is stylistically, he's, again, a different piece than what they have in this offense, at least at a high level, because I do think Donovan Peoples-Jones is a good player, maybe not a great one, though.
The other guy that they added, Marquise Goodwin, with some speed. He talked about, using that speed, and also if Deshaun Watson was one of the reasons he signed with the Browns.
It's really humbling to work with somebody as elite as Deshaun. I don't really have to guess or wonder if is he going to throw it far enough? Is he going to throw it? I look in the air and I'm like, dang, I got to run. So when you have somebody who is as dedicated and as focused and as experienced as he is, elite, it just makes my job easier. All I have to do is run.
Kind of off that, Marquise, what is the biggest thing about those deep balls? Is it knowing where, like when Watson releases it, like what is the biggest thing that you guys need to get on the same page, just strictly on the deep passes?
Running.
Just the running.
And making the play, catching. Yeah. Just being at the right place at the right time and making the catch. That's the most important part that I feel like people lose sight on. Yeah, I can run a route. I can do whatever. I can make the DB fall. But if I drop the ball, it was for no reason. So, got to catch the ball.
How much was the Deshaun factor impacting your decision to come here?
Huge factor. I mean, we have the same agent. I've thrown with him before. I just haven't been a free agent at the time and at the right time to be able to try to mesh it up and play with him. So this worked out. I mean, it was a great opportunity. It couldn't be any better.
And Brad, that's kind of we haven't felt that effect yet. If Deshaun Watson gets back to what he was before the 2+ years off, you're going to see a lot of guys that want to come here and play.
There's no doubt about it. And I think Goodwin is a good example of, you know, especially now going into his age 33 season, is more of a complementary piece, but he is that field stretcher that makes plays down the field. You saw it happen in San Francisco, even in Seattle last year, a bit of a resurgence when he doesn't have a bigger role and can more kind of just be a guy that, you know, the defense loses him, he gets open downfield, and if the quarterback can get it there, which Geno Smith certainly could last year, and Deshaun Watson absolutely can as well. But yes, in a general sense as well, if Watson gets back to who he was, like you said, you're going to see players on both sides of the ball that want to come play for this team. They're willing to spend, like we talked about. They have a good, exciting roster. If they're coming up a playoff run and Watson looks good, you are going to see more free agents probably looking to play in Cleveland next offseason.
Brad Spielberger from Pro Football Focus and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, talk some defense. We'll hear more from Denzel Ward and Jim Schwartz. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Brad Spielberger from Pro Football Focus. Denzel Ward met with the media, talked about his role and the strength of this defense this season.
So you definitely expect me inside, outside, wherever. So just trying to be anywhere I can to make plays and help this team out.
What's that like to have, like, obviously with MJ having the great year that he did, we know how good Greg is, and obviously you to have the three of you and really be able to blanket some guys out there?
Yeah, that's huge. Just guys having the versatility to play different positions, whether that's corner, nickel, or safety, and just being able to move guys around, create matchups against the offense. I think it'll be helpful for us this year.
What does Juan Thornhill bring to the secondary?
Versatility. I mean, he's able to play the post. He's able to come down into the box or in cover. So he brings that versatility, leadership to the team.
And Brad, when you look at this defense, a lot has been made of the line because they revamped it. This defensive secondary is really good, and I think Jim Schwartz is going to utilize their skill sets maybe a little better than they were the last couple of years.
Yeah, I certainly think so as well. I think it is an important quote, though, to hear Ward say he'll play on the inside as well. It sounded like Greg Newsome maybe had a little bit of issue with that. I know he kind of refuted that point, when he switched agents and there was speculation about a potential trade and all those things, which have now seemed to have been snuffed out. But nevertheless, the guys, they're willing to be chess pieces, will be moved around. Are we in the slot? Are we sticking out wide? I also think Schwartz will just do a better job of using both units cohesively, right? Where when you do dial up pressure and generate more consistent pressure on the quarterback, it's going to benefit your secondary, and vice versa, where they're also going to get home with some coverage sacks because of what he's doing on the back end. So, yes, I think it was one of the bigger upgrades of the entire offseason across the NFL was getting Jim Schwartz in there in place of Joe Woods. I think he's just a tried and true proven defensive coordinator, and now with the talent you've added, I think he's going to dial up a whole lot of interesting concepts to keep opposing offenses guessing every single snap.
So Pro Football Focus ranked the top 32 cornerbacks, and a couple of the Browns are in that ranking. So Denzel Ward, 14. Ward coming off subpar season for the Browns. The defense as a whole collapsed, likely heavily contributed to that with a rebuilt Browns defensive line in 2023. Ward might put himself back amongst the very best. Also in those top 32, Greg Newsome checks in at 27. Newsome quietly backed up an impressive rookie season with another good campaign, but has still yet to register an interception in the NFL. 14 pass breakups over that time, allowed just 9.8 yards per reception in 2022. Again, I keep harping on this, and I hate to be a broken record, and I'm not trying to beat up Joe Wood. I think he asked Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome to do a couple of things that weren't the best things they do, and I think that's what Jim Schwartz is going to do. Put guys in positions to succeed better.
I agreed 100%, and this is also where I do think the units working together helps a ton, because when you have a defensive secondary that you want to play more press man principles, play up at the line and bump and run coverage, even if it's not a true, man snap, but you're not playing soft and off, you better have a pass rush. Otherwise, those guys are going to get picked on. They're going to try to jump some routes occasionally, and there could be double moves and things of that nature. If the offense knows they have more time and they can wait a little bit, as long as Myles Garrett is chipped and doubled and whatever, then they can wait a little bit to let a play develop. I don't care if you've 5 Deion Sanders back there. If the offense has 3 seconds to get the ball off, they're going to complete a whole lot of passes. So I agree that we put in a more advantageous position, but I also think they'll recognize we can do what we want to do with these guys from a stylistic standpoint only if we're generating pressure, and that is what Schwartz's bread and butter has always been.
Yep, absolutely. Jim Schwartz talked about that defense and what the identity of it will be.
Yeah, we'll find our personality in training camp, and, that's part of what training camp's going to be for us, is finding out what our best combinations are and how guys play off of each other. That's going to be important. I think that we do have some flexibility there, particularly a guy like Za'Darius, who's a very effective inside rusher. We have some young developing players here that have had good off season so far. Alex and Jordan, both of them have stood out in a lot of stuff, and I think both of them can contribute inside. But, the flexibility is important. For matchups in the game, moving guys around a little bit. You'll probably see a little bit more moving guys around maybe than they've done in the past, but it's all about just creating good matchups and finding out what the guys can do the best. We're going in with an open mind. We're not making any determinations. May 30th? May 30th, 31st? Yeah, we don't have a game this week.
And Brad, when you look at it, that's something that the Browns defense has not done. They're going to look to exploit matchups, and once they find a matchup they like, if they exploit it, expect to see it very often.
Look at Tennessee last year. They had neither Harold Landry, their big money extension guy, and then Bud Dupree just was not effective coming off a torn ACL of his own. So 2 of their high-paid guys on the edge barely played, and they were one of the best pass rushes in the NFL. Just were able to rotate so many different bodies, and you saw a guy like a DeMarcus Walker play at the end against the run and then kick inside for pass rushing downs and had a really productive year, signed a solid contract with the Chicago Bears in free agency. That is what he does. That answer is perfect, because that's exactly what we've seen from Za'Darius Smith in the past. Did a little bit in Green Bay, a little bit in Minnesota last year, but you're going to see guys that mix and match, and the young guys as well. We probably talked about Isaiah McGuire. Again, early downs probably on the edge, maybe kick him off the field and get your dogs out there to get after the quarterback. I think Schwartz does a phenomenal job of the matchups, but also keeping bodies fresh and actually being willing to play guys that maybe aren't ready for a full-time role, but finding a niche 300-snap role for them that makes a lot of sense and benefits the team as a whole. That's what I'm excited about. And then, talk about Ogbenyaka Okoronkwo, all the other guys they have. They can do a lot, and I think he's going to find all different ways to keep offensive lines, scratching their heads.
Brad Spielberger from Pro Football Focus and I are going to step aside, take one more timeout. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit more about that upgraded defensive line, plus some bold predictions for the Browns. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Brad Spielberger from Pro Football Focus. Reasons for optimism on the defensive side of the ball. This is from PFF's NFL show. Sam Monson, Steve Palazzolo. Let's listen to what they have to say about the Browns D.
The other reason for optimism is it's no longer just Myles Garrett on his own on the defensive line. Yeah. Now it's Myles Garrett, Dalvin Tomlinson, Za'Darius Smith, Obo Okoronkwo, Isaiah McGuire. even if guys like Alex Wright don't take steps forward from a year ago, Siaki Ika in the draft as well, like they have a defensive line that should actually be able to make an impact, which is going to help the back end. Denzel Ward, JOK, Greg Newsome. So Cleveland's defense, I think, should be dramatically better than a year ago.
Yeah, there's that depth, right? All along the defensive line for the first time in years. They got some receiver depth, just overall pass-catching depth. Browns winning the AFC North this year with all that depth and Deshaun Watson bouncing back.
And again, Brad Spielberger appears on the PFF NFL show. We've used clips from you. How deep is this Browns defense, and how good can it be, do you think, talent-wise?
Yeah, I think it's becoming a more and more prevalent thing across the NFL. I mean, the best example would be Philadelphia last year, where I think, we've heard of platoons for, pass catchers or for various position groups, but now at a defensive line, just have as many bodies as you can and then use them in different ways. You bring in Hassan Reddick in Philadelphia, you have Javon Hargrave, Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat, there's 10 guys you can rotate through. And I think that is the key, like they mentioned, is this depth where on a third down passing down, let's say Dalvin Tomlinson had been playing 3-tech against the run. You kick him to 1-tech as a true, kind of your interior guy. He has better pass rush numbers for us as a true 1 technique going up against centers and maybe guards. More on the interior, avoiding tackles, avoiding a longer pursuit angles of the quarterback. You then have Zadarius Smith. That's kind of a 3-4-eye 5-tech on the interior, and then you have Okoronkwo and Garrett. That might be one of the better, 4-man units against the pass in the entire NFL. But if you don't have those guys, you can mix and match the names they mentioned. Ika for a big dude, a nose tackle, has some juice getting upfield. McGuire a little bit as well, had I think 84, pass rush grade for us last year. So yeah, that's the thing though, is that for every NFL player, a lot of times I think we expect every guy to play 800, 900 snaps and be good on all of them. Otherwise, he's not a great player. There are guys that are awesome for 300 snaps a season, and that's okay. And it still provides a ton of value, and I think that is what you're going to see. And like they said, we haven't seen that in a couple of years now in Cleveland.
The other thing it does is you don't get as beat up and you don't get as injured. When you get fatigued is when you get injured on the lines, because it is so physical and so demanding. So that's an added bonus of being able to rotate guys in. In theory, you don't get as beat up. This is from Connor Orr, bold predictions for the Browns. He's from Sports Illustrated. He begins with, Deshaun Watson will finish the season with a career high in rushing yards and touchdowns. Number 2, the Browns will acquire DeAndre Hopkins. And number 3, Myles Garrett will win the Defensive Player of the Year award. When you look at those, which are the most likely to happen, do you believe? I don't know that they're going to.
I actually like all those. They're bold, but they're not too bold. I think the interesting one, maybe it is boldest, and so I'll go with that one, is Watson having a career high in rushing yards and touchdowns. But I do like the idea in that you obviously have Nick Chubb, and now it looks like Jerome Ford maybe is entrenched as the number 2. Maybe they do add someone else as time goes on, but it looks clear that Kareem Hunt is not returning, and he obviously is a good athlete. Not Justin Fields, not Lamar Jackson, but has that ability. And Stefanski maybe with play action and misdirection could kind of get him on some boot action and let him run some things. So that one I think is very interesting. I think a Myles Garrett Defensive Player of the Year, frankly, is possible every season. It's bold to predict it because, you never know who's going to get it. But I think he's a top, maybe the top 5, top 1 defender in the NFL. And then, hey, we talked D-Hop. You never know. He actually just tweeted out a bunch of emojis on Twitter about 15 minutes ago during our segment. For all we know, it's nothing, and he's just toying with us as fans. But yeah, those are some good predictions.
Yeah, the interesting thing is when you add the talent that you added on the defensive line with Myles Garrett, if he stays healthy, he could have a huge year. Just based on the fact that teams cannot solely focus on him when you've got Tomlinson, when you've got Okoronkwo, when you've got Smith. There's a number of guys now that you got to worry about.
And that's the big thing, is that it's an either or. So either he does have a Defensive Player of the Year type season with massive stats, or teams continue to chip him and an extra guy. And in years past, that they were able to get away with that because there weren't other players winning. Now, if they do that, all those names you just mentioned are going to get home. So, yeah, either he wins Defensive Player of the Year, or his gravity and his presence causes so much of a distraction for other guys, it's a win-win.
Brad Spielberger, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. We do use your clips all the time, so thanks for joining us. Appreciate it, Brad.
Yeah, thanks for having me as always.
All right, Brad Spielberger, always really good stuff. Make sure you check him out. Pro Football Focus, the Pro Football Focus NFL show, also really good as well. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.